So I'm just going to take a thirsty brush, which is basically a clean, dry brush. And because it's still wet, I can touch that and pull out some of those pigments. And that gives it that distance. Welcome, accomplices. Today we're going to be spending some time just exploring what's in the palette. And a different palette for me today from what I normally use. This palette I set up when I did spend a couple of days with Michael Solovyev, amazing watercolor artist. He teaches all over the world. He happened to be here in Kelowna and spent some time in that workshop with him. And these are the colors that he recommended. We were painting boats and water and that kind of thing. But I'm going to see what will happen if I just switch things up a little bit. It's often, I don't know, we kind of get ourselves into that groove. I won't say rut, it's a groove where we do the same thing, same colors, and it's nice to just change things up a tiny bit. So there are different colors than what I'm used to. I don't have my Mayan dark blue and my undersea green and my quinacridone gold. In here we have a neutral tint indigo, which is a really beautiful dark blue, cobalt blue, and this is a phthalo blue, which is more aqua colored almost, which is beautiful for waters and sometimes in the sky. I think I've mentioned this before. Once I started painting, I looked at the world a lot differently. I observed clouds differently, and the colors in the mountains and the sky and different things. So you know, I see an interesting pattern in the shadows, and I'll think, oh, how would I paint that? So it's nice to, you know, nowadays we have these beautiful colors at our disposal, and why not take advantage of them? So, so yeah, that's a phthalo. This is oh, can't even see what that says. It's a dark green. I think it's a sap. This is a sap green, and this is a phthalo green. So it's again it's quite a bright color. And the phthalos aren't colors that I'm drawn to, but let's see if we can incorporate them a little bit into this design. And then we also have some, there's some moonglow and some quinacridone sienna and quinacridone orange in there, and some quinacridone deep gold, which is just another level of what I've been using. Now I have sprayed them once. I'm going to do that one more time, just to get them really ready to go. And we'll, because I want this to just be easy and not a lot of extra deliberation, I'm just going to have some fun with the paints today. And my love, of course, is landscape. So we have this little block of paper on the landscape orientation. If I was going to be doing my birch trees or something, I might want to turn it to the portrait orientation, but I think today we're going to keep it this way. And just while that's soaking in a little bit, this is a Toscana. I've recently started to use the Toscana, the Magnani 1401 papers. Toscana is the watercolor, the rougher surface, 100% cotton. This one is 7 inches by 10 inches. And 140 pound, as I say, 300 GSM. It's a lovely paper. I like that there's, you know, a nice texture to it. It's a little bit more even in the texture. It looks, it's what's it? Roll made. Can't think of the term of it. It's not handmade. It's made on a machine, so it sort of does have that almost like a little pattern sometimes to the grain of it, but that's okay. It's another way to add another texture to the painting. I did a painting recently where I did dip into this palette and I used a little bit of the cobalt blue in the sky, which is something that pardon me, a lot of artists do use. Because this is on a block, it will accept a fair bit of water, and I'm just going to give it one more application just to make sure that the paper has absorbed a good amount of the moisture, but I don't want it to be puddling or pooling, and I can see that that's where we're at with things. Now I'm going to dab into my cobalt, but I'm going to touch the pigment off to the side because I don't want a heavy pigment load on the tip of my brush. And I think I'm going to put some clouds in. I don't want the blue to necessarily cover the entire sky, but I don't really want to start my brush stroke in the middle of the page. So I'm going to just pull it across, and you can see where the load on the brush has allowed me to just, if I press down a little bit harder on my brush rather than that feather touch, it does give me just a tiny bit of extra color on the surface. Okay, I'm going to bring this down. Actually, I'm going to bring it right down to the bottom because I'm going to put some water in the foreground, and I kind of want that to have a bit of a reflection. I'm going to clean my brush off. I'm using the Solo 3-line brush, and this is from Michael Solovyev's Watercolor Online Studio. It's almost like a hockey brush. The difference being that the hockey brushes are, they're goat hair, same as this one, but they have a little more, I call it real estate on the end. So it's thicker. Even when wet, it stays, you know, there's a fair bit of bristled shape there. It's not fine. Whereas with the Solo brushes, you can bring them to a complete point and create nice lines if you need to. Both of them beautiful brushes, hold tons and tons of water, which is what I like in my watercolor paintings. Now with this sky, I'm going to barely touch that deep gold because it's a fairly deep color. And I'm just going to bring that through sort of about, I don't know, a little above center there. And I'm just, the thing about the quinacridone gold is that it does, even the deep gold rather, does tend to push the other colors away. So you get that beautiful blending happening, which is kind of fun. I don't want a lot of this here, but I'm going to bring that sort of down into the lake area, just so that we've got something that indicates the reflection of that yellow. I want it lighter in my lake, so I'm just going to barely touch the surface. And let the paints move and dissipate. Rather than make a solid straight line across, I'm bringing some of it up a little higher. You can see here where the white of the paper was showing through, and the gold is sort of at the base of that. Gives you a nice sort of faded in look. I clean my brush, and I think what I'd like to do is just go into the Payne's Gray, just touched it and then pulled off a lot of it. I don't know if you could see that or not, but I just want that to be barely there. And then using my paper towel, just pull that through a tiny bit. Remember, we're just playing here today. I want to see what this is going to look like. I don't know if we're going to have dark clouds. The page is still damp enough that I can go in now and dab out a little bit. And where I've put the gray, it does sort of, the bits that are left after dabbing out gives that sort of under shading kind of look. And we'll do that up on the top here, just make it look like there's some wispy things happening. And we'll tap out a tiny bit of that. I'm not turning my damp paper towel to make it white and clean. I don't mind that there's some pigment on there because I'm just basically pulling a tiny bit off the surface, very gently. I love doing clouds, and they are so fun to shape, as long as your paper is still damp. Once it starts to dry, you won't be able to lift out as much. So you can see where that little bit of gray color that we've added does tend to just sort of give you the hint of some depth in those cloudy areas. So what other colors have I got at my disposal here today? Some indigo. I don't know. That's a very, very dark blue. Let's see if we can create some mountain shapes with that dark blue. It will dry lighter, as watercolor tends to do. So we're just going to put some shapes there, and maybe something just back here, a little bit of land coming through at a slightly different height. A little inlet there, and some rocky shorelines perhaps down here. You can see where, because the paper was still damp, where I've touched the pigment to form my trees and my little bit of land mass in the back here, it's sort of filtered and diffused down, so it's falling into that lake area and giving it, I'm just going to tip this a tiny bit, allow gravity to do its job, just ever so slightly. You can see where that pigment has fallen sort of down through the water and given that shaded kind of effect. And that's ideally what we want to see. I think this little outcropping here is probably just going to be rocks. And these will be something more with some trees. This is almost reminding me of maybe willow trees, more full-bodied rather than the pointed pines and cedars that I often paint. So I'm just going to give those a little bit more rounding. And then I just think I want to have that little outcropping a little further. And then, clean brush, let's go back and explore another color. I'm going to try the sap green. I think that the phthalo are going to be a bit bright, but the sap green, I think, will be a nice way to sort of get some things happening in the front. And the sap green against that indigo, it's almost acting like my quinacridone gold does when I put it into the Mayan dark blue. It sort of pushes away and looks for its own space, which is very cool. I like that. And I'm just going to, I think, add just a tiny bit in this back area here. And because we've got the deep quinacridone deep gold in the sky very lightly, I'm going to go in, clean my brush, not dripping wet, damp. I can see that there's still a bit of moisture in my palette where the quinacridone deep gold was. So I'm just tapping the, the surface of my brush in. Pardon me. And we're just going to give a couple of dabs just for that addition of a little bit of color. You can see already where the indigo, even though it's a deep, deep color, how it's faded out and looks like it's receded into the background. This side over here is a little less faded. So I'm just going to take a thirsty brush, which is basically a clean, dry brush. And because it's still wet, I can touch that and pull out some of those pigments. And that gives it that distance that we were looking for. I'm going to put some sap green into the front here, and just a tiny bit more on just at the bottom of that piece of land. And what else have we got here? What have we got to explore with? Let's see what this one is. This is a quinacridone. I'm just going to have to turn it this way so I can read it because the water's glistening off it. I think it's a quinacridone rose. And it's nice to sometimes just add just the odd little bit of that, just to create some interest. And, oops. Don't normally add this many colors in, but it's kind of fun to check this out. I'm going to put this quinacridone burnt orange in to that area there, and grab a little plastic tab, and we're going to create some shapes. When your paint on the page is still wet, your page is still a bit damp, you can move that pigment with a plastic tab and it will push what's on the page, and where you stop pushing, it leaves a line so it allows you to have a bit of a shadow. And we can create a bit more definition. Maybe here we'll add a bit of some rocks coming down, a little cliff area, and then the rest will be for the lakeside. So this has a very faint bit of blue. We have a horizon somewhere back in there, I would assume. And again, with a brush that's almost dry, I just want to use the tip of my brush to pull out that pigment. And let's see if we can get it right across. Oop. Now we've got some of that shrubbery color coming through, reflecting in that lake. I always try to keep my brush working as straight across as I can. I've mentioned before, it's our natural tendency to want to do this, and that's not always helpful when we're trying to create a landscape scene. And just with what's on my brush, I'm picking up a tiny bit here, the brush barely damp, and some of that color's coming through. I'm going to rinse it again. So we've got a little bit of that green reflecting from the landscape, the landfall. And now I will come in with a chisel brush. This is actually an acrylic brush. The bristles are stiffer than a watercolor brush. Watercolor brushes typically have a very soft, flexible tip, and they hold more water. Acrylic paints don't need to hold the water. They need to pick up the paint, so that's why they're like that. And now that this is, I can see where it's drying quite nicely, but I'm going to tap out just a tiny bit of some of that excess. With the wet chisel brush, tap off the excess. And as always, just creating a tiny bit of a shoreline. Just by pulling out a bit of color, gives you some definition there. Where this blue has fallen down into the lake area, I'm going to go back to my solo brush. Just, you can feel it's cool, so it's just damp. And I'm just going to run it through those bits of color that have come down. I hesitate to do it that way, vertically, just because it tends to, I don't know, to me it's harsh against the eye, so I just want to pull out a bit of that color to soften it into the lake area. And then just go in and shape your landscape. This one here, we're going to go with that horizon line there. And we'll bring this one down just slightly. Shorelines do tend to jog and move up and down, and this gives you a bit of contour as well. If you do some of your lines a little higher, some a little lower, and then fade them out into your the body of your work. And then we'll do just a little bit on the bottoms of these rocky areas, just so that we soften that into that blue, so that it looks like there's some shadows of the rocks. Again, my brush is just barely damp, and the pigments on the page are still just a little bit on the wet side. Feather light touch. We want to do this as gentle and light as possible, and pull things out into the. Now here I probably pulled that color out earlier when I didn't really want to, so I just cleaned that up with my brush. And we want to just bring this so that there's not a white spot. You know, the lightest touch is all you need. That part there I'm going to leave, I think, just to the imagination. And that's a lot of what I love to do is leave a certain amount to the imagination of the viewer. And work with things as they go. I'm not painting from a reference. I'm painting from my vision, my imagination. And so what I thought initially would be maybe some rocks on this shoreline turned out to more look like a little grassy hillside leading down into the water. So I'm going to go with that. I like that. And so I'm going to leave those greens soft and sort of flowing down. And there, you have a real quick little landscape, just some fun play with some new colors. I loved that that the palette was beautiful together, and it didn't seem to matter. Mind you, I didn't put any of the phthalo in, but you know, maybe next time we'll do something with some phthalo and some, I don't know, I bought a tube the other day of opera pink, which is not something I generally use. So maybe next video we'll do something like that. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today. I had so much fun just playing with some new colors in the palette. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe to the channel. It makes such a big difference to how we can bring things to you in the future. You can also head over to the membership area.